Well, we want to say good morning, good morning, good morning. We want to say good afternoon, good evening, wherever you look here from. We're just happy to be here today, and I'm like so excited. These aren't guests; these were those that supported me and helped me through the process. Mike and Alicia, they pushed me out here, and I'm excited that he's here again with us. And Rick, my nephew, everybody be like, your nephew, your nephew. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you so much for being here today. You know, we had a conversation, and we'll get into that in a minute. But, I still got to pull out my mirror. I almost forgot. But before I do, let me say this. My name is Leslie Montgomery, and this is LKM Kingdom Living, Leslie's Lessons Learned. And I want to say welcome this morning. We are so glad that you're here. And because you're here, it makes us our day a little bit brighter. And in the process of that, I just want to say we are about at the end of what they call the new year, the old year. And I appreciate everyone that has come on, everyone that has been here supporting in every aspect that you can. And when I look in the mirror, I thought about it this morning. I don't look too bad. I look pretty good, I guess I could say. But if I look at myself and think about how I feel, I could say something different. But when I look in here and see the creation, see the one that has created me, the one that has formed me and allowed me to be here today, I'm so grateful. It's the holiday season. And during the holiday season, people get depressed, they get sad for many reasons. Some get depressed because they don't have enough money to buy gifts. Some get depressed because they don't have anybody. Some get depressed because this is a low time of the year for them. And we want to encourage you today, and we want you to know to keep your head up, keep going. Things ain't always the way they look, and they don't have to be bad when we have a different perspective. So don't give up. Don't think it's the end of the world. And who cares if you can't buy a gift? That's not the end of the world because you can't buy a gift. We give all year long. We give from our hearts. We give from love. And just because there's one time of the year that society, the world has told us, oh, you've got to give, I want you to be encouraged and know you don't have to give. You should be giving all year long. And what they do is one of their ways of getting us into a place of paying into their what they need. They need our money. And this is like one of the time of the year that they can come out of the red and they look forward to it. So listen, don't you go in the red trying to help them get out of the red. Be encouraged. It's okay. It's okay if you don't have a gift. It's okay. Tomorrow is another day. And I shouldn't say another day. It's a brand new day to start all over again. And guess what? Once the 25th is gone, everybody's gone on and doing something else. So, don't get caught up in that. We want you to know we love you, and we want you to know that it's mighty, mighty important that you stay in a posture of praise, stay in a posture of seeking God's face, which we call Elohim. And in the process of seeking his face, remember, he loves you more than anything. And the best gift you could give him is your time. So surrender your time to him. Let him love on you. Let him fill those areas in your life that need to be filled so you don't have to go through life thinking that you're at the end of your road because you can't buy a gift. I promise you, you're not at the end. It's probably the best thing you could ever do is hold on to that money because tomorrow you're going to need it for something else. So I just want to say be encouraged. Don't be down because you can't buy a gift. Don't be down because people look at you funny because you don't have a gift. Don't do that. Give yourself grace. And remember, love is all year round. If you really think about it, It's the one that don't love all year long a lot of times, that spend a lot of money trying to make up for what they didn't do. If you're loved all year long, I promise you, people will not look at you with their nose turned up because you can't give them a gift. So welcome, 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 welcome. I want to say thank you to all those that are on here. These are all hosts. I can't even say guests. These are all hosts on my show. And I appreciate each and every one of them being here today. You know, Wanda, I want to start with you today, introducing yourself and just telling us what you do, your spinoff.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wanda Floyd. I am a licensed hair care professional. I'm the owner of WLF Academy and the Brains and Beauty Academy, where we teach beauty industry professionals how to do business better. I am an author, a mother of 8 beautiful children, and I do have a spinoff from Have a Seat in Your Chair, Beauty Industry Talks with Wanda. It's Let's Talk About It with Wanda every Monday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we've been having some great conversations over there. So come on over. If you're here with Leslie, come on over and spend just a little bit of time with me. We greatly appreciate it. And I'm so happy to be here this morning. I've been looking forward to this conversation since the last time Mike and Rick were here. And I can't wait. So,
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. So, Mike, you got a moment to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, was it message, message and miracles? Did I get it right?
Messes, misses, and miracles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a. We haven't really done a lot in there lately because of everything that's been going on with me, but it's a community that we have birth had. We gave birth to mentally, and we're still looking to put that together. Um, but I don't know if I should even go into what's been going on. I mean, what else do you?
Well, we're going to get into that because that's going to be
Okay,
part of the
okay,
conversation, because you've had a journey,
right,
and we're excited to hear
right.
how you've come through your journey. And yeah, we're going to get into that. I appreciate the fact that you're here and took the time out of your schedule where you could be somewhere resting, somewhere doing something, riding bikes, whatever, uh, today to be here with us. And thank you so much. Now, Mike was the one that gently told me, when I told him, I said, Alicia trying to get me to do a live. He's like, what's taking you so long? You know? He's like, let's go, Leslie, let's get with it. And so, and he helped me, he hooked me up, got me together on it. So I appreciate him and Alicia so much. And Mr. Rick, how are you doing?
Good morning to all my beautiful sister queens and my brother Mike. I'm Rick Childs. I'm a health renewal coach, speaker, and the Air Fry King. So it's always a pleasure to be in your presence. This platform, I remember in the beginning how it started and then to look at it now. So I had to make sure I was dressed appropriately because I didn't want to come in sweats. I've been watching how y'all have been showing up, and yeah, I didn't want to come in as the odd man out. So uh, it's just a pleasure to be here and to be able to share
Yeah,
just the journey and the growth that has helped me to get to where I am. Just to be able to speak in front of a camera or to speak to people, because as we talk, you'll understand more about what I'm saying when it comes to that.
yeah. And thank you so much for being here. Him and his wife have become also a part of my life, and I appreciate them so much. And when Alicia and Mike couldn't step in, they stepped in, and when they didn't, when they were busy. Wanda stepped in, and I appreciate each and every one of you. So I asked you guys to come on again because we talk quite often, and we were having a conversation, and I asked you guys if you could come, if y'all would mind coming back on to share your story, because your story is so much different than when we started, and how much you've grown, and even with the forgiveness. And one of my questions I had to you today is, I was thinking about this. I was thinking about forgiveness, and I said, forgiveness and being a father, does it make a difference? Do you have to forgive now that you're a father, your father? So that's the first question on the table. I don't know who wants to start with that one, but that's kind of where I want to start. And then I want you guys to go into your journey thus far since the last time you were on. And you guys have been on an amazing journey, and you have witnessed much healing, much deliverance, much success. And I just want to hear about it.
Yeah, so I can start. I think forgiveness is definitely a part of the the job or the the title of father. Um,
Mm,
a lot of times, especially when you're just into fatherhood, still trying to find your way. And I know for me, I went into fatherhood not, of course, knowing my dad, and then of course not being able to forgive him. So I carried a lot of that stuff into marriage. I carried a lot of that into fatherhood. But what I found out is that as you grow as a man and as a father, forgiveness is part of the process. And when I say that, I'm meaning for my dad. I finally met him at 37, but I also got a good glimpse into fatherhood and some of the things that he may have been dealing with in his walk. Um, I, and I think about my kids today. There's things I'm sure that my kids will have to forgive me for. I'm not sure exactly, what all of that is, and if they're still holding on to stuff. But it's part of the process. I think one of the big things with being a father and being able to forgive your father is just being able to mature. So if and I know that's the case with me. There was a long period that I held this hurt, this anger, this this thing against my dad. Most of that time, not even knowing him. But as I grew, as I matured, I learned that it's something. It was part of my journey. Not knowing him, and forgiveness, for being able to forgive him, has allowed me to come through a lot of the stuff that I've been dealing with recently. I've fought. I recently fought a battle with multiple myeloma. It's a blood cancer. Um, so I'm a survivor of that. 1 year in, I'm in remission right now, so I'm getting stronger.
hallelujah.
And I really believe that the healing process in that was all intertwined with being able to come to grips with my father not being in my life and letting that go and releasing all of that hurt and anger. My dad, again, I met him at 37. He died probably 12 years ago. So he has come in and he has left. And all of
Right.
the stuff that was attached to that, it's my job to release all of that so it doesn't transfer to my kids. And it's an ongoing process, but it's a very important process in our growth. So,
Yeah, I like what you said, because um, you said he came in and he went out. There's a lot of times that forgiveness process comes when we don't expect it, or how we expect it. I think Apostle's trying to come in. You must be having issues. Um, so when you think about your father, just think if you never got to meet him. Just think if you never had that process. You know, even though you would forgive him, I think it would be different. I think sometimes when we don't realize what certain things does to us. What do I mean by that? Part of your healing was seeing him. Part of your feeling was being in his presence. Doesn't mean that he changed. It doesn't mean that, and I'm not going to say that because I don't know, but you just having that opportunity to be with him, that opportunity to show up for yourself. You know, you didn't have to go meet him. You didn't have to spend that. You could have said, man, forget you. You ain't been here all my life. What I want to meet you for now? Because there's a lot of people that are angry like that. So I think it's very powerful that you had the opportunity to meet him and you took it. And I think that there was an advantage to that. I think that there's a level of healing that comes along with that. I'm not saying that anybody else is not healed. I'm not saying that that's not the case. But what I'm saying is, in your case, what you went through in the last year, I think that was part of the process you needed.
Absolutely.
You know, so I think that's powerful myself.
Yeah,
You know.
it all works together, and you know, a lot of times we go throughout life and we really can't see it, but a lot of the lessons that we have in our younger years and our development years, I should say, a lot of those lessons will spill over into the situations that we deal with as adults, or you know, when we're older. Um, they help us, guide us, and for me, I look at this cancer diagnosis and everything that has happened over the last year, and I can definitely look at forgiveness. Being able to forgive my dad was a big part of me being able to forgive Alicia. For all of our um,
And
errors.
that's good.
So we can't look at our early lessons as just something that happened, and it's all attached. And
Yeah,
for me, I live. The more I live, the more I realize that all of this stuff is training, and it's just being able to become aware of what's needed for you to get through some of the things that you're dealing with.
yeah, that's true. That's right. We're in training,
Yeah.
and through the process that helps us. And one of the things I think that helped you was having the right attitude. You got to have the right attitude going through the process,
Okay.
because if you don't, it's going to hinder the process. So, Rick, I know that you have been through some experiences yourself and come into a place of forgiveness. Talk about that. You talked about it before, but I think the thing that really impressed me, or that I really like, is that when we talked about it before, you guys are not in the same place. You're in different places. Your lives have changed so much since then. So that's why I wanted you to come back on. I don't know, Rick, how you feel about that?
Well, I would definitely agree with the forgiveness part. It is a definite piece of the puzzle that has to happen, because if it doesn't, what you'll end up doing is repeating the same things that you learned unconsciously. You will become who you saw. You will become who you were not. And people don't understand that. I realized that because of the inner work that started within me. And I just realized that even as I sit here and I listen, to Mike, because Mike and I have talked before and we had a lot of similarities, but then we also have a lot of differences. And in order for me to understand who I am, I had to do inner work. I had to go deep into myself and understand first and foremost who I am. And then once I understood that part, and it's still a process, but the forgiveness part, I just realized that as I'm sitting here, listening and I'm waiting to speak, is that I have two fathers to forgive, and two fathers that have been forgiven, my biological and my stepfather, because y'all have heard me share about my stepfather, but my biological father, who wasn't in my life, who I didn't meet until I was 19, and it was just a meet. That was it. He didn't become a part of my life, even though he was. And that was at the time where I was getting ready to go into the military, into the Air Force. And I said, I've been hearing all these different stories, and people would say, you look like him, you sound like him, you act like him, and it was a curiosity as a child. So I had to go meet him. And one of the revelations that came to me before when we talked was the fact that we may want what we want, but it is in God's plan why things happen the way that they do. And I honestly believe that I wouldn't be the man that I am today if I had been a part of his life. I'll be honest with you, and I'm talking about my biological father, because the other thing that I'll say is when it comes to forgiveness, you have to know the history. You have to know the person that you have an offense against and that what their history is. Because I can go to my stepfather. He didn't have the tools. He didn't have a father in his life. He didn't have a lot of things. He couldn't read. So you just think about all of these things and you're trying to navigate a world as a parent. I saw a t-shirt, loved the t-shirt. It said, I was a good parent until I had kids. My t-shirt, when I make my t-shirt, I was a good dad before I had children. And I say that, and I mean that because you don't know what type of parent you're going to be until you have children. You can know before because you have all these grandeur ideas in your head and you're doing these things how you want. But once you become a parent, the things that you may have received and learned as a child, you're probably going to use those with your children. So it is so important to understand that forgiveness, not only does it affect how you parent, it affects how you move in life. I know for me that once I understood that, it showed me, even with my children now, I'm a great provider. Sure, but I'm the nurturer that I feel as a father that I should be. I still have a lot of, to be honest with you, my children, as far as forgiveness with them, even though I'm providing you, even though I'm doing a lot of the things, I still see some of my faults, some of my things that I need to work on and continue to work on. And it'll be a discussion with them. My oldest, child, I've already had that discussion. And I went to her and I asked for forgiveness. Once I started doing the work and I saw the forgiveness that I had for my stepfather, it allowed me to see, okay, you need to go and ask for forgiveness from your children, because there's some things that you did or some things that you didn't do that you need to work. And the last thing I'll say with that, when I did that with my oldest daughter, what I saw was a release. I saw her start to blossom because I went and had that discussion with her, because I went and asked for forgiveness with her, because I shared the history with her. A lot of times we sit back and we don't understand because we don't know. We can only go by what we see. But once we get the information, then it's up to us to decide which direction we want to go with it. So, yeah, it's a lot of things that since the last time I was on this show with you talking about this, the revelations. And even as I sit here now, I'm still writing notes. So,
Yeah, that's good. And it's, if we don't recognize, it don't have to be the father, but the mother. If we don't recognize our own selves, our own healing, our own process. The process that we take our children through, like you said, is a lot of times a process we grew up with. But it doesn't mean that it's healthy. It doesn't mean that it's right. I think about well, all of you, but Mike and Wanda. I know you can chime in when you want to. Mike and Rick, you both have sons, and raising your sons, what would you teach them differently growing up on about forgiveness, or how would you try to stir them in the right direction with that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Oh,
I think for me, you know, the biggest lesson would be not holding it in, because for me it was a ticking time bomb. When I was 37 and I had met my dad, I was like up to here in hurt and pain, agony, and it was where I had to meet him to survive as a person. Because there was alcohol involved. There was a whole bunch of things that I was doing that was slowly killing me. So I would definitely say just being able to talk about things that are bothering you, um, and just being open. For me, there were times when I was younger and I would, kind of ask my mom who my dad was, but I wasn't really asking her.
who your daddy? Who your daddy be?
Yeah. So, and then there was this dual side of me that was like, there was one part that was like, I don't want to meet him. I don't need him. And then there was the other part, the silent part was the
See,
part that was yearning, and that was the part that really needed to be able to step out and speak.
yeah, that's the
Um,
part that acts up.
yeah, yeah,
That's the part that acts up. It
that's ego.
responds to what
Yeah,
the inside
yeah,
is holding on to.
yeah,
And so many times we find that in children, and we want to say, I don't know what's wrong with them. I can't. They this, they that. No, 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 no. It's deeper than that. What we see, and a lot of times they won't express it. They won't talk about it, but they'll continue to um, act out.
yeah,
And you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? And sometimes it is counseling. Sometimes it is counseling with your children, counseling by yourself, get healing, understand what healing looks like. Apostle is in the back listening, but for some reason can't get him on the screen. So I just want you to know that he's listening to everything we're saying. Um, and yeah, and I think about that. I think about fathers with sons and how important it is that they begin to pour into their sons, like they said. Someone was saying this: mothers need to hear this too, and it's true because mother responds to dad the way they see their children being hurt, and when they see their children being hurt, then they become negative. They want to fight. That's my baby, you know. But that
But not
most
only
times,
too, but not only that, Miss Leslie, the mothers need to hear this too because we have played a pivotal role in keeping our children away from their fathers, right? Because of what went down with us and the father. We
right?
have played a pivotal role in speaking negatively
Okay,
about that father to that son. And that's something we have to learn not to do. Our boys need their fathers. And there is no, whatever went down between the father and the mother, that father is still that parent and should be a part of their lives. Now, if there's something going on where they're not, you know, in the right place in their
right.
life where they should be a part, there's still a part we can play in how we speak about that father. So yeah, we do need to hear this because we have sons, we have grandsons now, and we can learn from the mistakes that we've made when it comes to being a mother. I know I had to, when you talked about them being hurt, I had to learn how to not speak negatively about my children's father because I didn't want them hurt. And so I tried to buffer it any way I could. Any conversation that I knew was going to, I tried to buffer it. It wasn't my job. So yeah, moms do need to hear this as well.
And
They
one of the things we're big on, not we, but you hear a lot. You just like your father, and that's like a thorn in the side. And don't let it be a father that they don't know, they haven't seen. Man, that's right there's a hurtful thing. What do you mean I'm just like my father? I don't even know him.
yeah,
And you look at him, you see he looks like him, he acts like him, and then you become angry, you know. And that's, yesterday Apostle was talking about this, and he said, we birth the fathers, so yeah, they're going to look like something about them is going to be the father, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
And we have to understand that. We have to understand what we're doing to them when we say you just like your father. Now I do tease my girls because I don't have any boys, and say, Lord, you look like your father. They say, all right. I call Adrian, her father's name was what was his name? He's passed on, Kenny, and I call her Kenyatta. And then when Ashley do certain things, I call her, all right, Hamp, and they give me this look. But it's not like I just they portray certain things of them. It's not bad things. It's just when they talk to me and stuff like that, I'm like, all right, Kenyatta, or all right, because I see him in them. And we can't get away from that. We can't get away from that. And the problem is that we look at it negatively because of the experiences we have. And
Absolutely.
then we portray this on the children, and then the children want to act out, and you want to say, that's your father, don't do that. They're only doing what they've seen you do, you know.
And also we have to think about, because we've learned whatever that character trait of that father was when that son was conceived, you're going to see that
And
in,
that's a whole nother conversation.
right? And so when we're saying, why is he acting out? Why are they doing that? Well, then you got to think about, how was the father acting when that child was conceived? That's why you see all these characteristics.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's yeah.
This,
But
this,
I
this
did
is,
have a question. I did have a question for both of you. Uh, what was parenting like for you before you had the forgiveness of your father? How were you as a father with your children?
Before I forgave my dad,
Yes.
uh, it was terrible. And I think, when I said that my kids will have to forgive me, it's for all of that time, of being there but not being there. Um, I was in the house, but I wasn't really present. Um, you know, it was at that time in my life. It was about me. I went to work every day. I came home, and of course, I spent time, with the kids, but it wasn't like a deep connection. As a dad, because I didn't have any reference. I didn't know what that looked like. I look at like the males in my life, from that time period. It was a different time. Dads didn't really love on you like, you may see dads loving on kids now. May have been a smack on the head, and you know, there wasn't a lot of love, as we see now. Men back then didn't talk about love. That wasn't something that was said a lot. And no I'm not blaming or it just that's the way it was. That's how they were raised. As I look at
Right.
my grandfather and my uncle, even my dad who has passed, my biological father. I have to look at their parents, and then I have to look at the parents of their parents. I mean,
That's right.
it goes back so far.
History.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, I had to mature to be able to understand that. That didn't come like automatically. So that's where a lot of that hurt and anger was, or where it came from. So to answer your question, for me, I was, I was, I was, I was a father, but I wasn't a dad. If that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Uh,
Yeah. And that's in the household a lot, and a lot of the arguments, um, the men think that the women are harassing them, and they're just trying to get you to be more involved, more connected. So with that, when that happens, that causes conflict. There's so many areas of this that causes conflict in a home because of lack of understanding. And Rick, I know you want to add in on this. One of the things before I wanted to say was my husband, and he came from a long line of abuse when generations and generations, and he didn't know anything else. There wasn't love, there was abuse. um, his mother, and I'm just using her for an example for a minute because we can go grandmom all the way back, but because he reminded her of his dad. When she got mad at him, she would tie him up in a chair and beat him, you know. So, she didn't know how to handle her anger. His father used to beat her, and it just was a long line of all types of abuse, And she talked about when she was pregnant, and one day he came home and she was at the top of the step, and she knew they was gonna fight, and she jumped down the steps and just started wailing on him. This is the type of stuff that they grew up in. His grandmother was an apostle over churches, and she used to beat her husband. He didn't beat her; she used to beat him. His uncle, um, his wife, at the end of the service would run home and hide underneath the porch because that's how much he would fight her. So we have to understand that it's deeper than what we see. That is a long line of things, that takes place. All right, Rick, I don't talk enough.
Well, thank you. So I guess I'll go back to the question with
Yes.
what was asked as far as before. One of the things I'll say that I was truly blessed to get to a place where I am today because of uncles that were in my life, because of family friends that were in my life. The time that I came up was when I would have uncles come and get me, for the summer, would spend time with me, and I would see because my uncles were in-laws. They were married to my aunts, so I got to see the dynamic of the husband and wife, not only within my own family, but also outside of my family. So having those, I would say mentors, I would say men that wasn't just pointing out to me and telling me, how to be a good man or how to be a good father or how to be a good friend. They were showing me in action. So I say that to say for my son, one of the things that myself and my wife do is that we have to understand him foundationally. You hear me talk all the time about temperaments. I honestly believe that Your temperament is your foundation. Everything else is built on top of it. You know, a house can only survive on a strong foundation. You can put many rooms on it, put much weight on it, but if the foundation isn't sound, if it's not being worked on, then it will collapse. It will allow what's on top to collapse. So for my son, understanding who he is first and foremost on a foundational level allows me to add rooms to his life, to be able to add lessons to his life, and not necessarily point things out to him, but how do I walk? How do I move? How do I treat his mother in his presence? The
Right.
other factor, if you don't know our story, is my son is special needs. So that adds even another dynamic to it, that because of how I talk to him, how he receives the things from me is so important. Now, I cannot control or dictate or predict how he's going to be as a man, but what I can guarantee you is what he's seen me do, I've seen him repeat, and that's been the good stuff, but it's also been some negative stuff. And once I recognize that, then I start working at that. I start trying to get him to understand we don't do it like this because you're a man. You don't do it like this because you're going to be a father. So you start to recognize certain things, not only within him, but also within yourself that you
Yeah.
need to fix on the journey. There's, you know, we could talk about this all day, every day. There is no perfect answer. And I'm a firm believer in positives and negatives. And I say positives and negatives because I'm an electrician by trade. And I know that you cannot have one without the other. So when I talk and when I share, I don't just share the positives, I share the negatives. Because if you fall and don't know how to get up, then that's a problem. You know, we all fall, but when we don't get up, that's when it becomes a problem. So we can't live in a perfect world. We'll never live in a perfect world. So we have to understand that when we fall, when we falter, when we do things wrong, what do we do to not allow it to happen again? And those are the lessons that, you know, for me as a father, as a man, as a brother, as a son, as a husband, you know, I'm always trying to get better. But it only happens because I know my foundation. I know what rooms are on top of my foundation that either have too much clutter in it, either it's empty, or either needs to be built. So for me, it's just understanding that as I move through life, what does my son need to see? Not only what he needs to know, but what does he need to see?
That's good. That's a good. Both of those are good statements to really think about this thing. Like you said, it will. This is a conversation that never ends, and it's true, and it never ends on both sides, the mother's side or the father's side. We're always growing, we're always learning, and sometimes it, like you said, it takes our children to mature us. It takes our children to see, pinpoint certain mistakes and things that are happening and going on that we don't recognize ourselves. And I promise you, your children will point it out. They will point it out, and it's how you accept it. Are you willing to really change? Are you really willing to do things differently? And that I think is an important thing, so that we understand and realize that we have to change our ways, not just our children, but we as well have to change our ways. So, Wanda, you look like you wanted to say something. I'm sorry, y'all.
No, you're good. I just was thinking about the foundational piece that Rick was talking about because, like Mike was saying, the house that he saw built, right? Um, and his parents, his dad, saw built. Mike had to take that whole house, tear it down, gut it out, and start building all over again with a new foundation, you know. And but he couldn't do that until he recognized that this house is outdated. It was built crazy. The foundation wasn't
That's
stable.
good.
Uh, my this is so funny, but my ex-husband, his father literally bought land and built their house. But how he built the foundation of the house, there literally was like a jack or something under the house holding a specific part of that foundation up, right? So in a certain part of the house went like that. And so the foundation was built
Wrong. Yeah.
crazy. It was built wrong. It wasn't built
Yeah.
stable. And so that's what I'm hearing. I'm so visual, you guys. And so that's what I'm hearing Mr. Rick say, and then thinking about Mike after, realizing what I had wasn't right. He literally had to start all over. And some of us have to start all over and rebuild and build the rooms different and use a different type of insulation and all of that stuff. We got to upgrade. That's we seriously just
Mhm.
have to upgrade. And this is so
Yeah,
good.
that's good. My father, I never knew. And I didn't even know I had another father till I was 38 years old, you know, and going through some papers and found some papers. That's how I found out. But the father I had was, he was a drill sergeant. He was a drill sergeant at home as well as on the job. But there was some things that he did teach me. Um, some were good and some weren't. But was I'm not even gonna get into that now. But yeah, um, yeah, because it's not about it's about you too. It's not about me. But I did wanted to say that I didn't know my father, and it was like there was always a void, and I knew something was missing, and I didn't know what it was. I remember going to school one day, and one of the children was like, "You're adopted," and I was like, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." And I went home crying. And my father and my mom didn't tell me. They went and pulled out the birth certificate, the new birth certificate, and said, "You see what name is on here? That's who you are. You're not adopted." So even when I was little, they never took the time to tell me. And I think about it. I said, I do think about his temperament, and things like that, and wonder what he was like, coming up, as being somebody that my mother was attracted to, or was in love with, whatever the case might have been. But they say my only thing I was able to find out was his name, and when you pull it up in New York, it's a whole bunch of them. So I haven't been able to find out much about him. I did the what you're supposed to do, the DNA and all that stuff, but nothing has come up yet. But yeah, I would not that um, I would just be interested to know about him. What kind of character did he have? I know what they told me. He was a gangster. They told me he walked around. He carried a double barrel shotgun in a case, and he walked around with it. You know, I know those things, but I don't know the deeper parts of him. I don't know if I have any sisters and brothers out there that I don't know about. So yeah, I mean, all these things. I guess if I was little, it probably would have paid a deeper part in my life, because I would have felt like I needed to know him. Or when you're a child, you need to know differently. You need to know differently than when you're an adult. So yeah, so I don't know. Um,
Lizzie, can I say something about
you
that?
sure can.
I think I'm listening to you, and I think we all want to know where we've come from. So
Right.
for me, at 37, I had become a different person, or I was, starting to become a different person. So, it wasn't like if I didn't meet my dad, I wouldn't make it. But
Right.
I wanted to know where I came from,
Right.
and years after that, I started to do research, and I found out about of course, my dad and his family. So I've seen pictures of like uncles, and haven't met them because a lot of them have passed on. But found out that they were raised in Louisiana, and just looking at all of that stuff and understanding your roots
Your
from
roots.
from both sides. I mean, I'm well rooted in my mom's side, but my biological father's side, I had no idea. Then I'm my I have a stepbrother who had sent me, because when my dad passed, I didn't have any pictures of him. He sent me pictures of my dad when he was younger, and I almost dropped the phone. I
You
looked,
look just like them.
yeah, yeah. So it's when you get information and you see stuff like that, it it connects the dots in ways. I mean, like I said, you want to know, like, where you come from. Um, you want to have a good idea of that. So that is something you said triggered that.
Mhm. Did I see your hand up, Rick?
Yeah, I wanted to add into that because what Mike said was so important. Knowing where you come from, that I think that's for everybody. It's not even just for fathers. It's for all of us because of the dynamic that brought us here. We all want to know where we come from, what our identity is. But I think and I'm gonna just be honest, what really has helped me, not knowing where I came from, but knowing who God created me to be. Because wherever I came from and where I'm going to be, who did God create me to be? Because if I was to transport right now out of this room, I would still be Rick somewhere else. I would still be Rick somewhere else. I would still be Rick somewhere else. So for me, each and every day is about being the best version of who God created me to be. That negates everything else, because even if I find out where I came from, that's not going to change that I'm an introvert. That's not going to change that I didn't have my biological father in my life. Because when y'all hear me talk about temperaments and temperaments and temperaments in the foundation and all of those things, but we build on top of that. We build on top of that. We add on top of that. We subtract on top of that. When we understand that, I can guarantee you now, because when you have that information, when you know that, you can honestly look at individuals and tell their temperament. You may not know their history, but you can tell their temperament. You can tell that they're introvert or extrovert. You can tell that they're outgoing. You can tell that they're subdued. They're not as a outgoing person. And when you understand that, you can kind of see, why do they move this way? Why do they respond to me a certain way? And when you start understanding those things, even forgiveness comes into play. Forgiveness becomes even more major because now you understand the inside of that person more so. And like I said, it all changes how you were raised, what trauma you may have had in your life. I know as a introvert, because of the traumas that I had, made me even more of an introvert. Now, am I an introvert today? No, because when I understood who I was and understood that I have an introvert and an extroverted side to me, I did not let my default become my defeat. Okay. I didn't just rest in my default. I didn't just rest as an introvert and said, okay, all right, I'm going to live life like that. Because if I did, I wouldn't be a better father. I wouldn't be a better husband. I wouldn't be a better son. I wouldn't be better on this stage right now. Because if I was an introvert, if I was the Rick then, I'd have told you, no, I'm not coming on. I'll tell you no, you're not even gonna know my story, because I would have never shared it with you. The only way you know my story is because I became an extrovert. An introvert can formulate the message, but it has to be an extrovert that's going to deliver it. And the work that has gone into me understanding who I am allows me to be the best version of who God creates me to be each and every day, because we get a new day to get it right.
Well, as I always say, I'm a middle version. I'm in between. I don't know what I am. But any last words?
And in your last words, there are some people that are watching. There are going to be some people that will come and view the replay. what would your message be to the son who hasn't had his father? And how does he forgive? Uh, you were saying that getting them to communicate. How do we get them to begin to communicate? So that's what I'd like us to wrap this up with, to help those that are dealing with, because it's never too late to rebuild. So, how does that parent help that son?
I think it's putting them in the right environments. As a kid, it's again completely different time now, but there are so many groups and clubs and things that for me as a kid, I just wasn't a part of any of that. So as Rick was talking about the introverted side of us, I was always that. And I was always, I mean, I had a core group of friends that I would hang out with and play with, but actually getting out and sharing feelings and we just didn't have, there wasn't any space for that. Fast forward to today, there are so many opportunities for that. And I would say for any young um, kids or young adults today, getting into these different rooms and groups and sharing. There's so many. The other thing is, I always thought as a kid it was I was the only one that didn't have a father. There are so many
Wow.
brown and African American boys that don't have dads, and if there's a way for them to connect and share their feelings and talk it out and express what they're going through, it starts to, and it's painful, don't get me wrong, but it starts to to mold them into something greater. Even if your dad is in your life, there's for me, I had to realize that, Mike, regardless of if he's in your life or not, you still have to go out here and produce. You still have to do all of the things that you need to do to survive. You know that woe is me mentality, and it just it that will trickle down to so many different things, so many different vices that that's another show right there. But if we don't get out and share and talk, it's so easy to get caught up into that silo where you feel that it's just you. So to answer the question, I would definitely say, just getting with different groups, finding different groups, whether it be a church, online groups. There are so many different avenues today that kids who don't have dads should still be able to thrive. Um, because I mean, honestly, there are some kids out here that really don't need their dad. The dads that they have probably don't need to be in their lives.
Right.
Just being honest. And I think kids need to understand that that's the case. And sometimes it really is. I mean, and I always said, my dad wasn't in my life to be my father. I think that whole lesson was about forgiveness. And like I say, going back to the whole cancer thing, that was the lesson that I'm able to look at and pull from today. So I think that's a big part of it. Just getting out and sharing feelings and emotions.
Mhm. Well, Apostle, can you hear us?
I can hear you all fine. Been listening the whole broadcast. Great broadcast. Shalom to all the brothers.
Hey, shalom.
Good to see you, Mike. Good to see you, Rick. To your wives, we send our love and shalom to them as well. You guys are chatting up some stuff here, man. Stirring up a real need for not just humanity, but also for Christianity and its representation of his kingdom in the earth as human. But you guys were about to have last words. So, Mike, I was listening to you. Some real good stuff there, man. And I would also, love to listen if I can come in last after Brother Rick has made his last statements, as you guys were already in a system in the cycle there. So, forgive me for coming on late, but I've been on. I just want to make sure that it's such an important topic because it is what it is. But I want to give Brother Rick, I don't want to mess up that flow you guys had going on.
Okay. No. Yes, Rick, you have anything? And actually, we'll let Apostle close us out after, as he's gone again.
Yeah.
I'm still here.
Oh, go ahead, Rick.
Okay. Yeah. I thought about the question. I don't know if I have a answer, but what I would honestly say is, and what I've learned over the years is, the best self-care for men is getting it out of their head. And what I mean by that is talking about it. And what I found is a lot of times when men get into a room and they talk, they find that they're more similar than they are dissimilar. They find that a lot of them have gone through and are going through the same problems and issues. So for a young man that doesn't have a father in his life, the men that are around him, and even the mothers that are around them, need to recognize that there is something there that needs to be fed, because he's getting fed. That young man is getting fed somewhere, and it's probably something wrong. And most of the time you can see that as parents, as people that are connected to them can see that. I've had some parents say to me, I want you to speak to my son. I want you to mentor my son. But when they tell me that, you have to follow through with that. Okay. Because you see what you see, you understand what you're going through. And I just know that for men to come together and share share as a group, we have to share outside of that group. So invite other men. I speak that my son has special needs, and I had the opportunity to be in a group of men that all of their children are special needs. And one of the things that I saw that really hurt my heart was the options that a lot of these young men, because I was the oldest man in the room, and a lot of the options that these men had used and went to weren't the options that I went to. And it really hurt me because they didn't have the information. They didn't have the opportunity to choose. And I understand it, because everything that I heard from them was pain. So the choices were built off of pain. But you only know this when you're sharing. You only know this when you're able to give to others. So that's what I would say as far as helping a young man that doesn't have a father in his life. If you see something, say something.
That's good. That's good. And that's a whole nother topic, the special needs. And there's so many to reach that men deal with it differently than women, and just the structure of that whole thing. That's a whole nother topic. Apostle.
Yeah, that really is an entire. It's another topic within the topic, and it's extremely relative. Um, the psychoanalyzing of every single solitary scenario as a counselor, when I psycho educate and psychoanalyze each particular patient or client or parishioner that we have, it's an interesting thing to understand. Now, I'm not going to hold you guys up because I got to run, you got to run, but I want to make sure that we understand this thing. And Rick, you hit on it earlier, and I wanted to really hope to catch up, but I couldn't get free from where I was and what I was doing. And Mike, you too touched on it, but I want to make sure y'all understand something. For those of us who grew up into your 30s, never having met your father, as your father, but have dealt with your mother's husbands and with their choice, there is an ugly duckling syndrome that most people don't know goes on. And if you really understand the story of the ugly duck, I'd love to come back and help and have this conversation with you guys again, to really unpack, because brother Rick, what you bring up about the mental health, the actual mental health issues that go along with this, doesn't matter whether you're male or female, it's still an issue because of what we're doing, our diet, our culture. Because I really want to touch on this issue of abuse. Everybody thinks that, you know, some of the stuff we've encountered in our day was abuse in the previous days. Abuse is predicated on the society you're in.
Mhm.
So if you were in the days of a slave and your dad was the buck of the plantation, that dad loved you differently
That's right.
than what you see being loved today. So if he punched you in your chest and told you to buck up, he was loving you. Today, you're going to put him in jail. You got to know the difference of that nuance. So if your dad was the song we wrote, that song was deeper than y'all really understand. Papa was a
Role.
stone. And that was because of the culture he was in. And now if you really take the opportunity to understand this, and I'd love to come back, I'm just so sorry I got here so late, is that when you're in a culture that determines and dictates how the masculine role in the family structure is to be played out, with the level of maleficence and mischief that went into the construct that family has to sit under, and there is a direct assault and an attack on removing masculinity from the family, you need to understand it wasn't dad's fault so much. My situation, I wanted to kill my dad. I promise you. When I grew up, and until I actually met my father, my whole goal, I had this one thing to do. And that was to, when I meet him, shake his hand. And I worked on my left hook so much that what I wanted to do, and this sounds vicious, it sounds mean, I hope you guys can forgive me for saying it, but you need to understand how deep this goes for a person trying to find their identity, who is a leader. So my goal was, I would go down to Joe Frazier's gym in Philly and any other boxing gym in Jersey and Camden that I could. And I worked on my left hook, because my actual goal as an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old child was, it wasn't until I got about 13, 14 when I realized I could have avoided a lot of foolishness and some masculine instruction, and all the men I threw myself at, uncles who love me, but I'm not their son. Mentors that my mom and dad or church people might know, but I'm not their son. And so when you're missing that piece, there's a void. There's an abysmal void in a man's life and a daughter's life who does not know her father.
Yep.
So my goal was to learn how to throw my left hook. I remembered I was 13 years old, and I had an altercation in my home where my mom's husband was a part of his culture of that day. Heroin was the thing, cocaine was just coming in, and eat the cake anime was the phrase of the day. Y'all didn't catch that, y'all might be too young. Eat the cake anime, spit that out, put that stank on it. All of that was what that culture was about. So they whooped and they beat. That's what they understood as love. So when Mike was talking about getting to know the history, and Rick was talking about how, to have your children today forgive you for your lack of understanding, you had to understand where it came from. And that's a difficult journey. But my goal was to literally shake my dad's hand, whoever he was biologically. And when I shook his right hand, I learned how to shake a firm hand. My goal was to drive his nose bone back up into his brain. Y'all laughing at my pain.
No, it's a lot of guys.
My goal. You have no idea. That carried on for me up until I was 32. I was going to meet him, and ask him, what the hell did I do to you to make you abandon me and leave me with these different clowns and these people who could never fill that void for me, and have me sitting out here wandering around until I got old enough. And like, I love the phrase that was used, and I quoted it myself from time to time. I didn't become a good parent until I had children, you know, because you can be a seed giver, but to be a father that's now given a nickname for daddy is different. To be a fathering mechanism, to be a stud, to be a producer and the progenitor of life is different from being a prophetic element in one's life. So today we have a lot of in the way that this democracy we live in America has developed this welfare system. We have a lot of professors, education style professors, teachers, right? Much like what Paul said, we have a lot of teachers, but we don't have many fathers, right? So we can break that down differently, but we have a lot of professors as masculine entities that we think can substitute and make the change, and help aid the child who was without that parent or that father. But we need the prophet. See, because the father is the prophet in the family. And the prophet directs the way of the creator. Now, what becomes interesting to me is that when the prophet is missing, whether they are on some other kind of time or there is a society maniacally removing them from the process of life, you have people coming in to profess an alternative life. And here's the problem with that. You and I have need of our fathers so badly that Yahweh sent Yeshua to reset what Adam messed up. Yahweh sent Yeshua to be the second Adam to reset how humanity is supposed to operate with the Father, because the first father messed it up, and there's a gap as to how humanity is to function in the society the Creator made. So you can be professed and taught to manage, but there is an innate yearning in a man that when he knows who he is and where he comes from, you can splice an apple and splice it with a pear, but it's never the apple it was designed to be. It's never the pear it was designed to be. So that father is the actual seed that is to be reproduced in the womb. And when the actual seed producer is not there when the products come out, then there is confusion in the product. And that confusion does not go away. To this day, I'm 60 years old. I'm 60, and I have father issues because of the void, the darkness, the place that I could not gather information as to why that ugly duckling syndrome. Yes, I was the ugly duckling in my family because a swan is not a duck. My mother married a duck. She had a relationship with a swan prior to me. So I'm that swan, they're that duck. So me trying to fit into being a duck under what he is, I'm never going to be what my brothers and sisters' fathers are. And I've got two sets of brothers and sisters, and I'm the oldest of both clans. I am a man of many brothers and sisters, but I'm a single child. So at the end of the day, until I met my father and decided not to kill him, y'all gonna hear me. That was y'all don't hear me. That was a decision not to drive his nose bone back up into his brain the day I met him. I just got saved. And fortunately, he had just come back from a Jake's conference, I think the first Manpower conference, and the men were going crazy at that time. And he came to me and says, yo, I'm that guy. Now, here's the problem. That guy was my best friend's dad. Literally my best friend. Two of them were both my brothers. They didn't know, and I didn't know. It wasn't like it was this awkward thing. So not trying to keep the testimony, focused on me. The issue is learning that I tried to figure out why I did certain things that other brothers and siblings and nephews and cousins did not do. And it made you feel weird. When you don't know why you do what you do, I think Brother Rick was talking about having his son in close proximity to him and letting him know that, okay, my tendencies are coming out of you, positively and negatively. But I have an opportunity to curb the delinquency in that, and then culture and nurture the positives of you. And we don't do this that way because you're a man. You might feel it. I know I did it, but here is why we don't do it. Now I can get ahead of my child and let them know that that's not what it is. I'm sorry to bore y'all with this. I know I'm coming on late and talking, but this is a serious thing. So when I'm counseling men my age and younger than me, I'm not just talking to them because I'm the preacher. I'm talking to them because that's the only reason I have the authority to preach it, is because I've lived it and I'm still living it. There are never enough issues resolved at this point. I know my father. Our relationship can never be the father relationship I have with my sons and my daughters. I respect him as a human being. I realize he did not know. I think one of you, I think it was either Mike. No, I think it was both of you probably said the same thing. They didn't know. And then under the cultures they were nurtured under, they had no idea. They were just trying to live for themselves. They was living just enough for the city. These some real songs. Y'all them some real songs. Y'all act like y'all don't know. We living just enough for the city. So, and they didn't know. I remember my son, my oldest son, I had him as a teenager, but I vowed that I would never, never, ever have any of my children not know who I am. And I have been in their lives forever. But when I first had my first son, I did what I thought, based on what I saw, was necessary. And I spanked my son just because he didn't do what I said, until I learned legally, you don't do that. Now that's the culture we're in. But when it came to it, I understood that when my son makes a mistake, I have to talk to him first. Nobody talked to me. I didn't have a father there. I think it was Rick saying, it was Mike saying, having somebody to, pop you upside the back of your neck or hold you and grab you close and pull you by, an uncle or whatever. But, I had an uncle who I wanted to be around because I didn't have a dad in my home. My brothers and sisters had their dad living with us. My mom's husband, but I wasn't his. Oh, he put food on the table. I got clothes. I was also made to be the babysitter. The priority was you protect my hen, you protect my chicks, you protect my children, you protect my puppies. And if you don't, when I get home, I'm gonna deal with you. Well, okay, Mr. Bigger Man than me, I'll do the best I can. You know what I mean? So you don't get the same treatment. So even for my brothers and sisters to hear me tell this kind of a story, they're offended. Like, my dad was a great dad, and I'm like, yeah, to you. And so when you am I talking sense to y'all?
Oh, yeah.
Too much of this. Mm-hmm. And so when you don't get what you see them getting, you realize that, my God, there is something so desperately wrong here. So my point to this, and I want to close because you guys got to go, I got to go. And maybe we can talk more about it another day if that's something that Leslie's Lessons Learned and this wonderful Miss Wanda, who does a little bit of hair, would like to have done. And Mr. and Mrs. Rick and his beautiful wife, and Mike and his beautiful wife. And Brother Mike, man, Yahweh Rapha is with you. And I will be honest with you. You said something earlier. Let me finish this. I'm going to give you this last point. When you don't have what you're searching for as a child, and what you need as a child, boy or girl, is your father. Because that is the essence of you. Your mother, the incubator, is an adorner of flesh. Thank God you look like your moms. But who you are at your core when you angry is your father. Who you are at your core when you giddy and glee is your father. Who you look like, thank God, got a lot to do with your mama. But the way you respond, 90% of the time, it's your dad. So women, you are your father in a skirt. Brothers, you are your dad 2.0. And the problem is, like we've all experienced on this platform, we didn't know who our dad was. We never saw them angry. Now, I saw other men angry. I saw a coach angry. I saw the pastor. I saw my uncles, but I never saw my dad. So when I would act up, they're like, why are you like that? I don't know. And there was no go getting help. People didn't say, hey, you need counseling. There wasn't all this emphasis on some unnecessary counseling, some counseling to literally subvert a normal process. And I know what I'm talking about, clinician-wise, as well as pastoral-wise, because we want to throw medication at it. And we want to put them in a turning process. And we want to keep that separation going in those children's mind who don't have fathers and have suffered from the actual syndrome of not having a father. And now they're confused how to raise a child. And then you got some people saying, we're going to teach you, so go get anger management. We're going to teach you, so go get parenting skills from a system of democracy. And it is not the system of the kingdom. And you can't even use the principles that the Creator gave us because you can go to jail for them at end of day. So the issue becomes when you're missing that process of having the man, listen, just watch, girls, just watching your dad operate from the kitchen table to the garage to the mailbox will affect your life. Brothers, just watching your dad throw a baseball or football, watch a game. Your dad, not another man, a group of men, your dad. It fills your life in ways we cannot even quantify. But the quality therewith that comes with that is amazing. The reason I know that is because my father is still yet alive. He is 75, 76 years old, sharp as a tack. I now know why I do what I do. I now know why I am meticulous. I now know why I will punch you in your throat and have no problems doing it. I now know why I can smile at you while you talk about me. I now know why I got this drive in me. Because I'm seeing it. But man, I could have used this when I was younger. Does that make sense? That void can never be filled. And I can't go back to him and say, yo, you let me down. You failed me. Because he didn't. He didn't. And yes, there were men who helped to educate me in ways. And there were, people who could teach me things that should be of masculinity. But only a father can say, hey, son, you can be better than me. And here's what I've done so far. That's why with all of my children, I sit down with them. I'm like, look, you're doing that because that's in me. Your anger, that's mine. That driving you, that comes from me. That study habit you got, that comes from me. And when it gets you in trouble, I can sort of kind of talk to you. But I get ahead of them because I know where they're going. Even at this age, and all my children are now grown, most are married, one waiting to marry. And yet I'm still able to be a bag of wisdom to them because everything that they're going to do, every process they're going to use for decision making comes in great part from what was already in me, passed on to me. And that seed giver must be in the equation, not just to produce the seed and the fruit, but to cultivate that fruit. If it's not there, mom cannot do it alone. Well, it's a girl. She cannot do it alone. Here's why. I think it was Leslie, that Prophetess Leslie, that brought this up earlier. And I think I've talked this on platform enough for everybody to get it. When your child starts feeling himself and smelling himself, male or female, and they are a product of a relationship you are no longer in, mom, they are a part of a product that you are no longer with, that's him, he in jail, or he with somebody else. When that child, boy or girl, starts smelling himself between 11 and 13, all you see is that man you ain't with no more. And your anger for why you not with him displays to that child. And you got to catch yourself thinking, this is my puppy. My puppy's going crazy. No, your puppy is going through phase of life that's mandatory. And if you don't have him in her life or his life, he can't help you curb those weird moments that are going to happen, that go beyond your adornment and the way you trained them. Does that make sense? I'm going to shut up because I took too long. So, Pastor Mike,
We can't hardly hear you.
Oh, I put my finger over the cue. My bad, y'all. I'm holding my phone because I'm running. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
So, Pastor Mike, Brother Mike, that healing, at the time I went through losing my ability to walk and being in a wheelchair for over a year and a half. Couldn't feel anything from my waist down to my toes. It was right after I had met my father and had forgiven him. I do not believe if I'd have gone into that life-changing event in my life where I lost activity of my lower part of my body, I don't think if I had forgiven him that my healing would have taken the process it did right now. I promise you. Right now I'm playing semi-pro ball. The doctor said I wouldn't even be able to play basketball again. But I know for a fact once I had a relationship with him that we worked out, because I can't ask you to be daddy, sir. There's sometimes I still call him sir, Mr. It's weird because that's how I cut my teeth. His sons, my best friends, was his dad. And we called him Mr. Yada Yada. We didn't see him much. And at the end of the day, that's just what's in my head. I understand everything, but it gets to the point where I needed what they had. And I got to be careful to not covet that they had it. But now make sure I give mine what I now know they got from him. Let me give you a quick story. And I'm done. I'm done. Mike, I mean that. That healing comes out of that forgiveness. Here's the catch. When me and my father finally reconciled, and I met him and I knew him, he was saved. He cried on my shoulder. I cried on his shoulder because he didn't know what he know now. And I didn't know what I know now. So I brought his grandchildren to meet him. I go to his home. I now know why I dress the way I do. I go downstairs to his pool room. I now know why I love pool. And I go down to his pool room and he says, come here, I want to show you something. I said, all right, what's up? And at that time I was deep into Philadelphia, New York tailors making suits for me. I just always wondered. My mom said, why do you do that? I'm like, I don't go to Macy's and buy a suit off the rack. I got to have it made. So this one day of all days, I go in his house and he says, come here, I want to show you something. I got a suit that I got a cigarette burn on. It wasn't a cigarette burn. It was a reefer pop. The reefer bud had popped, and if you had seed pop and get on you and get a little seed hole. Y'all so deep. Y'all ain't been saved all y'all life. Y'all better stop judging. My daddy, listen. But it had a little hole in it, and he couldn't wear it because of what he does. And he says, but man, I declare we are so, our features are identical. I put that suit on the spot. And when I tell you my inseam, the crotch, the butt, the hip, the waist, the outseam, the shoulders, the athletic cut under the shoulders, bringing lapel, everything matched me as if the suit was made for me. And it was then, I can't tell you, putting that suit on shifted something in my soul. Like I'm like, okay, now things are making sense. Now it sounds weird, but that's just how connected and how important it is to know who you are. And from that moment, I paid attention to all the different nuances, and I now figured out why I smiled, giggled, laughed, and everything the way I do. So, Lady Leslie and Miss Wanda and great man Rick and awesome man Mike, healed man Mike, all of us are healed men. And let's remember to make sure that even though we don't have a child, which is why I do so much fathering in my ministry, I can't be your daddy, but I can help you find ways to recall why they do what they do if you can get connected to the family vein from that masculine side. That masculine is so much more important than we know. It is the prophetic element of the life. And that's why most of our men, not having fathers, don't really understand prophecy. Your father is the prophetic voice of that family. And it's needed in that offspring. Because if you pay attention to it, when the seed from the father goes into the ground can incubate it. But it has to be the farmer who put that seed in to keep raking over top of that ground, fertilizing, watering, digging up, giving air, getting sunlight to it. And then as it's coming up out the ground, stabilizing it and knowing which fruit to pick when. That father is so much more important than just producing fruit. My name is Apostle B.W. Jones, and I think I took too much time on your program. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. You added a whole lot of value to what we had said. And I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. Yes, it was powerful. And we'll have to work something out in the new year to continue this particular conversation. Thank you, Apostle. Thank you, Minister Wanda. Thank you, Rick and Mike. I appreciate you so much for being here today. And the topic is, it's not even closed. You can't even close this topic. It's just so many different aspects of it that can be dealt with. And I appreciate the fact that I guess another seed has been planted of where to take this to. And as we leave today, and I thank each and every one of you for being here. If you have not taken a moment to hit the like sign, to share or subscribe, please do so. And until we meet again, have an amazing day and do what you do best. Love Yahweh because he loves you more. Have a great day.
Shalom.